Good evening from Sri Lanka, but I can see that it's quite unsocial hours for some of you. Greetings and welcome. Thank you for joining at late in the evenings and the even early hours of the morning. Today, it's going to be quite an interesting talk because we have very talented speaker, Leonard Pinto. He's going to talk today about secret of diverse communities living in peace and harmony. And Leonard has got about 1.5 hour talk to do. So just sit back and relax and see what he's going to say. And then we got about half an hour for question and answers. Now, he's quite interesting in his professional career. If you look at him, he's an ecologist and also anthropologist, which means he just looks after the environment and plants and humans. So basically, he's interested in the welfare of all of them. So that's how I interpret, but I'm sure Leonard will correct my interpretation when he starts. And he's currently an environmental consultant to Black Downtown and an ecologist at Sydney Water. And before that, he's done a PhD on the subject as well. So he's well informed on what he's going to say. And let's move on from there. I have to make a small announcement before I allow Lena to speak. At the moment, there is a commission in Sri Lanka that's actually being asked to draft a revision into our current constitution. This commission was installed by the president about 3 months ago. And this report is due to come in early April. Now, the only chance in legally where the public can interfere with a constitutional amendment is when this is a draft act in the parliament. So we are planning to put in a Supreme Court case to get certain other things inserted into the constitution as well at the same time. So for this, in our website, you will see that there is a collection of signatures towards this petition. It's actually like we are looking for your opinions rather than just one petition. So there are 11 items, say yes or no. So the idea is to get that to be prepared for that. So we got about a month. So if you can just look into it and put your signature, there's a Sinhala and English forms at the moment, but there's Sinhala and English one at the moment on our website on the homepage. So I'll stop there and then welcome Leonard. Are you there, Leonard?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, it's late evening for you, isn't it? You can share your slides if you want.
Yeah, okay then. So thank you very much, Chula, for your introduction. And I'm grateful to you for giving me this opportunity to share some of my ideas with you all. And well, it is 11:30 in Sydney time. And if I say something not appropriate, maybe I'm sleeping and saying something's in my dreams. So if that happens, you can correct me towards the
I'll wake
end.
you up. Don't worry.
And say the dream time is an interesting area in Aboriginal culture where a lot of stories have come during dream time. Anyway, I'm going to talk for about 1.5 hours, and my presentation is divided into 3 areas. They are not specifically divided, but the substance is divided. The first part is more about general things, general aspects of conceptual, philosophical, about ethnicity and religious differences. The second part is historical development in Sri Lanka with ethnic, religious differences and of course some conflicts. And the last part is about some practical suggestions how we can move forward. Thank you very much. And yes, so I am happy to talk on the subject of secret of diverse communities living in peace and harmony. It's a very broad subject, as you can see, and I may not have all the solutions, but I will attempt to cover some areas. Uh, Now we start with a paradox. Being ecologists, we have this problem. Normally, a diverse community is said to be a stable community, but that is in ecological communities. But when it comes to human communities, it's not the case. And we ask why? Because, well, in ecological communities, we have different species. And uh, when you have food and habitat as uh, resources that these species look for, very often in diverse communities, they are partitioned. So there is less competition, there's coexistence rather than mutual exclusion because they share their food and habitat. But when resources are limiting, or the environment becomes harsh, or the population increases, then there is struggle, struggle for existence, and there is conflict. And you may have heard John Calhoun's experiments with mice and rat populations. What he did was he created a chamber with habitats for these rats, and he was living there and trying to manipulate the populations. And what he saw was when uh, resources are abundant, population is less, then they were having a very happy life. The females were producing young, looking after them, and they are spending a lot of time together. But when the population increase or resources become scarce, the females don't produce little ones, so they don't give them milk, and the males become inclusive, they become cannibalistic, and all these things happen, and there is a behavioral sink. So the 2 points that we could remember: when the resources are limiting, then the behavior changes completely. In the case of human beings, we are just one single species. The resource that we are looking for is just money or services, and they are not partitioned, and we all compete for this. And that may be one of the reasons why, when there is diversity, there seems to be more competition and problems. So besides physical needs, that is food, shelter, and mates, in the case of human beings, we also have some mental superiority in race, class, caste, religion, and superiority is determined by power and money. Greed and power have no limits, as we know from Hitler's superior Aryan race, or Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche is a philosopher who taught in our universities all over the world his philosophy, but not this aspect. He called Aryans as Ubermensch, supermen, and they want to make Europe under German Nazi sort of rule, and that contributed to World War II. So you can see the outcomes of this kind of thinking. And religion, ethnicity, politics, and economy have the potential to bring stability to human society or destroy it altogether, as we have seen in the Second World War. So we look at theoretical foundation. Human beings by nature want to live in harmony. I remember Itsiri saying that when there is an accident, people just go and help. You don't ask, what religion, what ethnicity you are. So that's in our nature. And some identities are forced on us by biology, for example, gender, others by the nature of the society, religion, ethnicity, and caste. They come from the society, but they are all real. We have to take into account. We have freedom to select some identities, like political parties, spouse, or even no religion. Most continue in the identities they were born. A few change their identities where possible and where necessary. Now let's look at the global situation. Ethnic and religious diversity. We have a population of about 8.1 billion. And in terms of ethnicity, UN recognizes 195 countries, And out of 190, there are about 650 ethnicities. In terms of religion, we have about 85.5% saying that they have a religion, and about 14.5% saying that they have no religion. And no religion means can be secular, non-religious, or agnostic or atheist, and they form about 14.5 or about 16%. So there is a substantial percentage. Agnostics and atheists form about 7%. So this means that our society is diverse in terms of religion and ethnicity. And as you can see in the pie chart, Christian seems to be the majority at the moment. Muslims comes next, Hindus, unaffiliated group, and then the Buddhists, then the others, and Jews form about 0.2%. And it's strange that uh, um, Muslims form about 25.8 and Jews about 0.2. One reason I think the Jews were very inclusive group. They were not going out converting others, and probably that's the reason why they are fighting to secure their land and their identity. Religious diversity comes from our nurture or nature, from our family, teaching, reading, surrounding, persuasion, even war. During the Islamic period, they fought and then they have to become Muslims or die. And then they have terrorism. Some people by marriage, experience, and some by conviction. And then within the same religion itself, you have diversity by nature, personality of the person. Some are introvert, some are extrovert, some question, some are conformist, and also your DNA and your genes. Looking towards Sri Lankan ethno-religious demography, again, we see a pattern, Buddhists being the majority religion, then Hindus, Muslims, Catholics, and other Christians. Ethnicity-wise, Sinhalese forming the majority, Tamil Sri Lankans next, and then you have Tamil Indians, Moors, and others. Something interesting is some of the Sinhalese are most of the Sinhalese are Buddhists, some are Christians, so that's why you get this difference. Same thing applies to Tamils. Most of them are Hindus, some are Christians. Another interesting thing is that Moors, Sri Lankan Moors, and there's also a category called Indian Moors, and they disappear from the censuses. Last 2 or 3 censuses, they don't appear. And there may be a reason for that. We can see that towards the end of our presentation. And of course, the others include Burghers, Sri Lankan Malays, Indian Moors at this time, and others. And religion and ethnicity, good and bad. We see good side of it. Religion brings some certain amount of personal helps in our personal psychology. It brings happiness, peace of mind, tranquility, comfort during problems. Another good thing is the social ethics. It helps to build good within the society. We have a social shame, which is unique to our Asian culture. You don't have that shame concept in the West. It's more on the duty and law. In our case, it's more shame, and what right and wrong comes from there. And then you have the concept of God seeing everything or punishing. So we become careful about doing wrong things. And of course, karma carries punishment or reward in the next birth. And this helps to form a righteous society. Same with ethnicity, it gives the individual a personal belonging, individual security. So social cohesion, comfort in the group, and relations in the group. And these are important for the individual to be part of that group to live happily. The bad side of it is when you start saying one is superior to the other. One's religion only is true, either history or because of sacred texts and things like that. Then another bad thing is the forced conversion or luring people by unethical methods that leads to ill feelings and a lot of disharmony. Priority in religion violates rights of other citizens. State laws are based on religion, like Sharia law in certain countries, that creates problems. With ethnicity, again, superior race can be a problem. Racial discrimination can be a problem. Violence, of course, riots and war, they are all bad things. Just trying to remove this to a side. That's better. I should go to the previous one. Is religion a right? Yes, UN Declaration says people have the right to believe and manifest their belief. Is it a myth? Can be. Some of you may know Carl Jung. He was a student or pupil of Freud and in the same Vienna circle, but he disagreed with Freud on a lot of mental conditions of people, patients who came to them. Freud was very materialistic and he based his analysis on suppressed sexuality, whereas Jung saw it as the problem coming from diverse areas, including religion. And he found meaning in symbols, he found meaning in archetypes, found meaning in rituals. Is it rational? Yes, some extent. People, philosophers like Spinoza, Kant, Aquinas, they believe that religion is rational. But later we find people, philosophers like Hume, Marx, Russell, they are saying no. Is it experiential? Yes, that is that came from a Danish philosopher, Soren Kierkegaard, in Otto Tillich. They said, you know, religion cannot be proved rationally, but it's experiential situation. Anthropological, yes, Taylor is one of them. Common belief and rituals in all religions. So our approach is going to be more anthropological approach. And we can take a step back and ask this question, does man live only by reason? And during the age of the Enlightenment, a lot of discussions, a lot of arguments were based on reason. But the fact is, no, we live by reason and emotions. Decisions out of science are often by emotions. There is a tinge of emotion that goes to rationalize some of the things that we say as rational. Religion is mostly emotional experience with some reasoning. Myths could turn into mystical experience. Signs and symbols or archetypes could lead to transcendental experience. They all bring some sort of human happiness. One may call them opium of the masses, but it makes people happy. Human psychology and anthropology of religion are related. Going to the next one. Case for religion. Yes, there is a case for religion. First one is mental emancipation, mindfulness, mental health, tranquility, and peace. So it's in the area of personal mental health. The second is in another area of ethics, because it helps people to do the right thing and avoid the wrong thing. It has also cultural roots, and it can also unite people in a state. In fact, Napoleon found Prophet Muhammad to be a very clever statement because he combined governance with religion, and that can also be quite effective in expanding your empire. So it has also some meaning, but you have to be careful when you apply it fully. Insight into Western moral philosophy. When you look at, first of all, moral philosophy means what people are saying when they say this is right or wrong. Whereas moral theology that you see below, it defines what is good and bad. So that's the difference between the two. And there are different types of modern moral philosophies that have come up. And in general, there's this issue, man as he is the uncultured wild man. Man as he ought to be, that's the disciplined and civilized man. Religion, culture, moral education, and philosophy can bring about transformation. So we have man as he is and man as he ought to be, and that's what is given in our religious moral text. Now, the Western moral philosophers are grappling with what is, in other words, what is our nature in terms of doing right and wrong, different from animals, and what ought to be. So you see sometimes people saying, well, this is our nature, it is all right to do this. And a popular error in Western morality on freedom and rights, we hear often about freedom and rights. Rule 1 is freedom is to do good and right, not to do bad and wrong. Rule 2, rights always come with responsibility. See, this is where a lot of Western philosophers or people who talk for rights and freedom, they failed about this responsibility. Why? Responsibility to self, as self is changing. Because today you say, well, I want to kill myself. The death wish comes. And tomorrow you are all right. Tomorrow you say, I want to live forever. But if you have committed suicide, then you can't reverse your life back. Responsibility to family, as one made a commitment to the spouse and later to children to be one spouse. Responsibility at workplace, as one agreed to fulfill one's duties. If that is violated, then unions have their rights. Responsibility to the state, as citizens is part of the nation and the country. Responsibility in applying rights to humanity, as we have a duty to humanity. That's where I find things like euthanasia that seems to fail our responsibility to humanity. Then we have the moral theology defines what is good and bad. It comes in Christian theology, it comes as commandments and describes it's because of sinful nature of man. It's about the conscience, and some of the guiding principles are one must always follow one's conscience, but the conscience must be right. That comes from Aquinas. And between two evils, one must select the lesser evil. And then, of course, we have the existential ethics, that is, in a certain situation, you may have to weigh things and make the decision. And then there are also conditional ethics. And so the modern moral philosophy is very much diversified in that sense. I would like to speak about relationship between truth, belief, and knowledge, because sometimes in our discussions we tend to think that only truth is found only in science, or it's found only in critical knowledge. But let's look at truth and beliefs and things like that. So I have put this taken from a book that I wrote. Truth, we know death, matter, planet, they are real things that we know. There's no need to question them. Then there are beliefs such as paradise, nirvana, rebirth. They are beliefs. We haven't proved, or we can't prove them because they belong to a different category. Then there are also poorly justified true beliefs, I call them, because people experience some of these ones, uh, not to the not the way like nirvana, rebirth, and paradise. More than that, people experience these things like divine experience, prayer, and things like that. And then you have within that another category, real knowledge, science, law, history that we learn. So science, all that falls into that category. Somebody might argue and say this small circle, knowledge should be in the truth center of that. Why I put it there is because even in science, we start with a hypothesis. So it's something like a belief, and then we test the hypothesis, and then it comes into that layer. Speaking about science and religion, last year I happened to visit this University of Leuven, Belgium. I went to the religious studies department, had a discussion with the director for research, Professor Yves Lamessinier, and his PhD students to see what they were doing. And my interest was mainly on where the Western society is leading to ethics in terms of ethics and morals. And after the meeting, I went to this room where Father George Lemaitre discussed the Big Bang theory with his staff in the physics department. And you can see on the other picture, Lemaitre with Einstein and Robert Millikan. In 1927, Lemaitre put forward the Big Bang theory. It was called the expanding universe. But Edwin Hubble put it in 1929. It was published in an English journal. Lemaitre's one was published in a French journal, so it didn't come up. And it was Fred Hoyle who coined the word Big Bang. So now the expanding universe theory, which is basically the stars that are far away move faster than the stars that are close to us. That's basically the theory. And now it goes as Hubble-Lemaitre law. And this was in that particular room. This picture was there. And on the other side, other wall, there was this writing. Lemaitre believed that science and religion were two different ways of arriving at truth, and that each of them were dependent on the other. His theory of Big Bang was not to be confused with the theory of creation. He says, I think that everyone who believes in a supreme being believes also that God is essentially hidden and may be glad to see how present physics provides a veil hiding the creation. That's an interesting one. And he was invited to Vatican by Pope Pius XII, and he was trying to ask him or trying to convince him that can we use this to prove creation? Because if it is expanding, then there must be a beginning. And Lemaitre's answer was no. That's what we see here. He said, in science, we follow a different method, and in religion, we follow a different method, and we can't apply one to the other. There may be coincidences, but we can't apply what is discovered from one into the other. And another useful side of prayer and meditation in human beings, irrespective of religions. So when you meditate or if you pray, you get good thoughts, and then there's nervous stimulation, and there is chemical release from neurotransmitters, especially dopamine in frontal area and serotonin in hippocampus area. And dopamines give good feelings, muscle movement, motivation, transcendental experience. In fact, some of the drug addicts also take this kind of thing, but it's an overdose. but this is happening naturally. And serotonin controls impulsiveness, social behavior, depression, and anxiety. And they give good thoughts. They give you comfort, gentle sort of behavior, and the good thoughts again keeps back on feeding, and finally you get a person becomes virtuous, self-disciplined, patient, gentle, kind, modest, etc. So there is a reality in our biology with this kind of process, and it is independent of religion. And if you see on the right, the brain scans similar to Franciscan nuns in contemplative prayer and Buddhist monks in meditation. They have a similarity in their brain activity scans because of the response. So it doesn't matter from what religion it comes, inside you there is this response. And these two guys, Newberg and Waldman, in a paper, they showed that when people concentrate God as an object, it's the occipital and parietal, as you can see in the brain, occipital and parietal. They are areas for sensory perception, more on that recognizing the outside and interpreting. So God as an object becomes more of a sensory perception, and God as somebody with whom you have union with God, then it's more parietal and frontal areas. But of course, frontal area is more concerned with decision making, past memories, and all that. And as you know, brain has multiple sort of sites or other. It's very complex, and the emotional brain is more towards the lower part, what they call amygdala, hypothalamus, and hippocampus. Of course, their report in going to those areas. And this was also in my book, but not in that detail, but in very simple form. And still the publisher put this disclaimer. We put a long one. This is the summary. In the event you use any of the information in this book, the author and the publisher assume no responsibility for your action. Some of the Americans, perhaps they have recourse to this kind of faith healing and prayer. Levels of operation of religion. Be aware that religion operates at different levels. When you say religion, it is at different levels it operates. So we have personal level, internal prayer, meditation. They are good for the mind, good for your conscience, good for ethics, and good for your mental health. Second level is social, celebrating together, which is good. We have Vesak, we have Christmas, Thai Pongal. These are good things, good for social interaction. Then we have cultural, which is also good, historical, heritage, behavior, ethics, and of course, in recent times, tourism. Then we have bad ones, political level. Politicians can exploit the situation, can bring in legislation, majority, bad for the minorities. Violent, that is really bad. You had crusades, Christian crusades, going to war in the name of the Lord. Then they have kafir. Kafir is an alien or infidel. That means those who are not Muslims. Jihadism, fight the war in the name of God, you are blessed. Of course, we had this experience with recent time, ISIS, Hezbollah, Hamas, and all that. We had in Sri Lanka, Budu Bala Sena. We had Ravana Bare and Sinhala Rave. They are all bad. Violates all religious principles. Religious and ethnicity. So what shall we do with that? Suppress religion, that's the solution in communist states. Follow the majority, that's the solution in Islamic states. Manage religion and ethnicity, yes, that is more meaningful. Well, monoculturalism, just one, we said, integrate fully into the state religion, like in Islamic states. Or uniculturalism, individual freedom is there, majority and historical culture informally prevail, like in Sri Lanka. It's not forced on us, but it's accepted. Multiculturalism, that is main culture, is diluted. For example, in Australia, you can't speak about white Australians. That is banned. Christian can't speak, diluted. Minority cultures are fully accepted and given equal status, like in Australia. So there are different approaches in different countries. What should be our approach to religion and ethnicity as citizens? I think the anthropological approach is a good one related to common human behavior. You have to be pragmatic, related to usefulness here and now, the situation, existential, related to real life situation, not theoretical, not ought to be, and avoid talking on superiority of one over the other, not historical, all the better, no, not so. We have to look at the present situation. Condescending Gnostics. Gnostics are people who think that we know we have the knowledge. Gnostic comes from gnos, which is and look down other people are foolish. Political, reject those politicians who are taking opportunity to gain power through religion. Not religious, in other words, not the external show of religion, but the internal values. And we find this both in the teachings of Buddha as well as in the teachings of Jesus. Religion is more internal thing, not scientific. Well, we have the proof, others don't have the proof. Not in structures, building big churches or temples to show that we are the correct religion. There's a golden rule to harmony. It comes from St. Augustine. Augustine was a, a philosopher, professor of rhetoric in part of the Roman Empire, and he was also some sort of advisor to the Roman government. This is not Christian era, before Christian era, or at the turn of the times. And he has two interesting books. One is the City of God. The other one is his Confessions. They are classical work. City of God, he mentions the material city and the spiritual city. And in the other one, he speaks about how bad he was in his confession. He was a young man. And this is an interesting saying attributed to him. In essential things, unity; in non-essential things, liberty; and in all things, charity. Might be a useful sort of a principle to follow. The anthropological approach refers to discovering common aspects in all religions. Go deep into human consciousness to find the source and meaning of human aspirations. There are certain social consciousness, social humanity. Take a step deeper into the human nature from the framework of the formal religions. In other words, we try to find out what the formal religion is trying to say and discover at a deeper level. Oriented, formalized religions as expressions of consciousness. So you don't believe, not that you don't believe, you believe, interpret them in terms of what is coming from inner human aspiration. Interpret authoritative textbooks in the context of exegesis and hermeneutics. Exegesis refers to what the text was or what the purpose of the author when it was written, understanding certain terms, and hermeneutics refers to how it should be applied today. So it's not a word-to-word interpretation of the Bible, but looking at the Bible or whatever text as in the case of Bible, you can say word of God in words of men. And in the case of other texts, it was written at a particular time for a purpose. And now, at the present time, how do we interpret the same meaning and apply it to the current society? So one way to look at religion and ethnicity from this perspective is to consider that we are all one. For example, all the religions are of Asian origins. Buddhism, Hinduism from India, and Islam from the Middle East, Christianity, Judaism also from the Middle East. And we are all South Asian by ethnicity, whether Tamil, Muslim, or Sinhalese, or whatever. We are of the same region. We have social diversity in terms of ethnicity and religion. Ethnicity we should consider as part of one humanity, one human race. Religion, consider it anthropologically, build trust and confidence through truth, justice, love, and conflict resolution when we have disagreement. And it's best to follow this golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And this concept comes up in all religions. In Judaism and Zoroastrianism, about 16th century BC. Hinduism, about the 15th century BC. In Buddhism, 6th century BC. Jainism, also 6th century. Confucianism, about 5th century. Plato, same time. Christianity, 1st century. And Islam, 7th century AD. So this is a universal principle that comes, and we should use this concept in our dealings with other people, especially those who are of different ethnicity. Some anthropological iterations, there is this statement that comes from Udana Sutra in Sutta Pitaka. There is monks, an unborn, unoriginated, uncreated, and unformed. If there were not this unborn, unoriginated, uncreated, unformed, escape from this world, the world of the born, the originated, the created, the formed would not possible, would be possible. But since there is an unborn, unoriginated, uncreated, unformed, escape is possible from the world of the born, the originated, the created, and the formed. Now, somebody might say, God. No, this is, I think, Chula and advice. It refers to probably Dhamma. So that because there is no God concept in Buddhism. Now, in Christianity, we have the attributes of God is explained in terms of is called eternal, self-existing, immutable. We tend to be similar in concept to not born, not originated, or not created. And God is a spirit which is formed to be unformed. And of course, further other attributes are holy, just, truth, love, merciful, omnipotent, omnipresent, incomprehensible, undefinable. In fact, the Bible, it said, when Moses asked God, what shall I tell the people? It says, I am who I am. So you can't define. So what we know about God is just a shadow or a mirror. And trying to produce God with a long beard is actually human creation of God. In Hinduism, there is this concept of the union of Atman, which is human soul, with Brahman. And that's one of the ends of the Hinduism, purpose of Hinduism, that you become united with God. And in Christianity, you find also the same concept, union with God, and divine milieu of Teilhard de Chardin, his books. Teilhard de Chardin was a Jesuit priest who worked in China and responsible for discovering the Peking man, and finally ended up in the museum in Europe, in UK, in USA, as a director or a curator. And his books were put in the index by the church at that time, especially The Phenomenon of Man, and even this one, I think, they were in the index, but now they became very acceptable books. So we have some similarities in these different religions. you have the Trinity in Christianity, where you have God the Father, who is the creator, and Son, who is the Redeemer, and the Holy Spirit, the purifier. Similar concept comes in Trimurti in Hinduism, where Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the preserver, and Shiva is the destroyer. So what we are trying to find in this anthropological approach is that there are similar aspirations coming from the inner human being, but they are expressed in different words. To compare some of the aspects of religions, this is not to find any sort of shortcomings. No, this is just to state as they are, and there are similarities. Right? Spiritual, yes, all religions are looking for a spiritual benefit or spiritual goal, not material. Spirit and soul, Christianity, yes, Islam, yes. In Buddhism, there is no person. There is reason for that, and it's called anicca. Hinduism, they have again a person, Atman, and they say the Atman exists. God in Christianity is three God, Trinity. Islam, one God. Buddhism, no God. Hinduism, there are many gods, but they also believe in some sort of a Trinity and one God. Prayer, yes, that is there. In Christianity, you have the Eucharist, Sundays, personal prayer. Islam, daily prayer 5 times a day, especially on Fridays. Buddhism, there is meditation, especially on prayer days. Hinduism, you have yoga and plenty of rituals that they perform. Sin is considered, comes to us in an action, it's a state, and there's punishment for that. In Islam, also the act, the person is responsible for that, and there's punishment. Buddhism, yes, we violate universal order, and there is punishment in life after. Hinduism violates universal order, and there is punishment. Virtue, everywhere there is reward for doing good. Redemption, through death and resurrection of Jesus in Christianity. And in Islam, God is the greatest, and He is merciful, and He is redeeming. In Buddhism, there is self-liberation. In Hinduism, one with God, Atman unites with Brahman. Existence, our existence is willed by God in Christianity. In Islam, also similar. In Buddhism and Hinduism, it's by karma. Next life, heaven or hell in Christianity, paradise or in Islam, hell is temporary and then you go up to paradise. Buddhism is rebirth and nirvana, same as in Hinduism. A case for God. Now, it is said in the Bible, God created man in his image and likeness. But what we observe, and the fact is, man creates God in his image and likeness with a long beard and a lot of God's manifestations. But if you go back to the concept of God, God has come from compression of good to also overlap. We have a similar concept of devil. Devil is the evil. The evil becomes devil. So some of these words have been coined to give some meaning to the word itself. And God said, I am who I am, cannot be defined. It's only an approximation. If we define gods, then that is not the God that exists. In fact, this is my sort of conceptualization. God has a resonance between non-personal God, that is energy, power, and a personal God. Because sometimes you see or you experience or you understand God, power, energy. And I'm sure with that kind of concept is very agreeable to Buddhist friends, but there is no God, but there is a power and energy, no personal. In the other side, you have personal God, which is very useful to people. Bible often speaks about God as very personal. And Jesus also was very strong on that aspect. Einstein found a personal God not very acceptable, but non-personal God who is responsible for creating universe to be meaningful. And if you look at the first two chapters of Genesis, there are two stories. Chapter 1, uh, in the original sort of scripture, is referred to, God is referred to as Elohim. In chapter 2, God is referred to as Yahweh. Now, if you look at chapter 1, it is a very informal sort of God saying, let there be light, and there was light. Let life come from the sea, and all that, and it happened. So it is let there be, let there be, let there be, till it comes to let's make man image and likeness. In the other one, chapter 2, so in chapter 1, it starts some sort of a evolutionary trend starting from light and then life in the waters. It's not fully in terms of our evolutionary process, but there is a general tendency till the man also comes at the end. Whereas in the other one, the man is the center and the animals come and then our environment comes later. So in the second one, God is very personal and he takes from the mud or soil, makes the image and blows it, and then becomes Adam or man. And then from there, Adam, he takes a bone and then makes Eve and then gives him life. So it's like God is making out like somebody who's making pots and pans. So, but it's more personal. So the stories bring about, use a message of how things have happened and how life had come to be. And the God looks in one chapter more personal, the other chapter more non-personal. Paul speaks about, for now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall understand fully. So the concept of God cannot be sort of understood properly. In the Gospels, we have seek the kingdom and you will find it. Some arguments during the last 2 centuries, there are a lot of arguments about existence. There are two major areas. One is a priori, and the other one is a posteriori. A priori is without thinking at all about God, but logically. It's called the ontological argument of St. Anselm of Canterbury. And his argument was, let's imagine the things that are high, and let's think about highest thing, and that existence is about the highest being above none can be imagined. Is idea of God is the highest point, and the existence is called the idea of God, and therefore God exists. To put it in another form, we can say, can we think of something that exists? Yes, we can see things around, they exist. Can we think of something that does not exist? Yes, we have some ideas like fairy tales or flying horse, because we can relate to some of those aspects, the tooth, fairy tooth, I was saying. Tooth, yes, fairies, we have some idea. And horse we know, but flying also we know, we can combine the two. And then we come to the negative side, which is, can we not think of something that does not exist? Yes, because we have no idea at all. And can we not think of something that exists? It's a little difficult because it's something that exists. Can we think can we not think of something that does exist? It's still difficult because it seems to be recurring, coming back again and again. And that's where the God concept he put in. And interestingly, uh, in Dawkins' book on God delusion, he mentions about Bertrand Russell Davies. He was going to get some tobacco for his pipe, and he was on his way back to Oxford, and he threw his tin of tobacco and said, "Golly gosh, after all, Anselm was correct," because some sort of a negative argument. I don't know why he put it there, but it's sort of a, some can argue against this argument, but it's an interesting way of looking at things. Now, a posteriori, that means you take for consideration that God exists, and then you work out from there. And Thomas Aquinas was one of those who put number of arguments like order and order in the universe and design and all those things. But what is today more acceptable is intelligent design. What they have said is it can't happen by chance. Statistically, it cannot happen by chance. So like Fred Hoyle and Chandra Wickramasinghe and them, they said, no, it can't evolve from the simple elements of life. Life cannot evolve the way it has been explained. So it has to come from another planet. So the exobiology concept and a lot of interest in trying to find whether there's life in another planet. But then we see the complexity of the our living world and also the universe. If say the brain function, how the whole body coordinates, and how even for a small thing, a lot of muscles, nerves, all these things have to work, and it's not possible that things would happen even in the universe. Say you have to get the correct gravity to keep the planets moving in the orbit. If it is too much, then it can go away. If it is too little, it can come and crash on the sun. So there is a system which you can't explain by science. Then you have the conscience, the inner voice to do the right thing. And even when you do the wrong thing, people in the courts, they don't justify, well, they justify the wrong as right. They don't say, well, I did the wrong thing. Immanuel Kant was one of those guys who, a philosopher, German philosopher, who said very strongly, spoke about the conscience as reason to accept God. There is this soteriology of religions, which is a common thing. Salvation theory occupies a significant place in many religions. Soteriology is the salvation theory that human beings have some sort of a salvation or liberation. In Buddhism, it goes as liberation from dukkha, attain nirvana by breaking the cycle of samsara. The cause of dukkha is clinging, tanha, upadana, to self that does not exist, and therefore the concept of anatta, and the impermanence of the things that we see around. So the concept of anicca. In Christianity, it's liberation from sinful nature, original sin, saved from God's grace alone, or grace and our efforts. Catholics believed in this. Catholic theology tells us that we are saved from God's grace and our work, whereas Protestant theology emphasizes more on God's grace. Redemption through the merits in the suffering and death and resurrection of Jesus that all Christians accept. Grace comes in diverse ways, including sacraments, especially conscience at confession, Eucharist, prayer and reflection. Conscience, hell and heaven, all those things, concepts come into this salvation story. In Hinduism, there is moksha. Moksha is freedom from samsara again, the cycle of death and birth. A union of Atman with Brahman, self-discipline and sacrifice to purify and attain union with God. Islam, Adam and Eve disobeyed, a similar concept as in Abrahamic religions. Humankind is not responsible for their sin. God is merciful and fair. Everyone should seek repentance and forgiveness. So you see this concept of looking for liberation, salvation in human nature, and it comes up in practically every religion. Anthropological systems in Christianity, and it's compared with other religions, as you can see, blue with Buddhism and green with Hinduism. So in a religion, you have these three areas: beliefs, ethics, and rituals. You can call them dogma, moral worship. So in beliefs, in Christian beliefs, they believe in revelation, scripture and tradition. In Catholicism, only scripture. In other Christian forms, how you interpret is important. We have enigmatic Jesus Christ, who is this person. In fact, he's a mysterious person. There's mystery about his birth, and he preached for 3 years only. And during this time, he did, according to Gospels, a lot of miracles, including raising people, dead people to life, 3 people, and his own death and resurrection. And these were, and his teaching, they were convincing to the people who were there. And the early church had problems in trying to understand who this Jesus is. He called himself Son of God. As we know, God can't have sons, children. And the exegesis or the understanding is that he equated himself to the Father or to God as at his judgment, the Jewish people accuse him of saying that. And how is this God and man, God and Jesus' connection? So the first councils, Council of Nicaea, Constantinople, Ephesus, they tried to define who Jesus is, and they came up with the final agreement in conjunction with Western or Greek philosophy. Was basically in Jesus there were 2 natures, but in one person. So 2 natures refers to divine and human. One person refers to person of Jesus. And there were the heresies were defined. If anything that went against that sort of belief were considered not acceptable. So in present day creed, we recite some of these concepts. In Buddhism, we have all what Buddha taught. We can't call it dogma because Buddhism is very open. Dhamma is very broad concept. In Hinduism, we have certain things that we believe: divine person, union with Brahma, Upanishad, Trinity and Trimurti that I mentioned. And in terms of ethics or morals, we have the 10 Commandments. In Christianity, conscience, sin, grace, life after death, and all that. And in Buddhism, we have noble truth, unsil, uttasil. In Hinduism, speak about dharma, ahimsa, brahmacharya. Karma and rebirth comes in both Buddhism and Hinduism. Rituals, worship. We have, in Christianity, we have sacraments, especially Eucharist, confession, prayer, reflection, meditation. In Buddhism, we have meditation and rituals. In Hinduism, we have Vedas, Samhitas, Brahmanas, and Arnakas. So we have the same sort of anthropological systematics in all religions. Now we look at the philosophy of being and becoming, because in Buddhism, it's being, not sorry, in Buddhism it's becoming, whereas in Christianity and other philosophies, including Hinduism, it's a philosophy of being. Now, philosophy of being comes from Aristotle's philosophy of causality, and he explained terms in terms of four causes: material cause, formal cause, efficient cause, and final cause. And if you look at the Aristotle's statue, there is a material cause, which is the matter, marble or whatever material. Formal cause is the shape. Efficient cause is that somebody made it. Final cause is made for a purpose. So for any object, you can explain in terms of these four causes. And that was taken as being. And if you look at Buddhist philosophy, there's no being, it's becoming. So we have anicca is impermanence, anatta is there is no self. So because they are changing, all the time they are changing, and there is a reason for that. So why should we attach to something that is changing? There is no purpose. But we have to also explain why we see a real world. So the concept of aggregates or skandha, the existence, you have form, sensation, perception, mental formations, consciousness, were introduced to explain the existence of what we see. You have the abhidharma, the momentariness of existence. The things are changing very rapidly. And the dependent origination, which is called paticca samuppada, which goes to show how that process of change as a cycle. Say, ignorance leads to karma formations. Karma formation leads to consciousness. Consciousness leads to mental and physical existence. And that physical existence leads to senses and mind. That to sensorial impressions. And that to craving, feeling and craving and clinging. Process of becoming, and rebirth, decay, and death. So it's the physical, mental and physical comes halfway, because before that karma comes, and then you see the world, and then you get attached to it, and then from there you get rebirth. So the whole process of change is described in more detail in the dependent origination. And Abhidharma explains how the things are changing very rapidly. And it's also interesting that the Abhidharma, that momentary existence, comes from Sautantika Abhidharma, whereas Sarvastivadi Abhidharma is slightly different. It speaks about a present, past, and future being held in some form of existence to explain this connectivity. And there's also Abhidharma in Mahayana, which is completely a different approach. Now, in Christian theology, the Aristotelian philosophy have been sort of used or interpreted in different forms. So we have revelation, scripture, and tradition. Now, human body is described in terms of our existence in terms of body and soul. So you have matter, material cause. The soul is a formal sort of a cause held in unity. And faculties of the soul are intellect and will. The soul is internal. And then there's this concepts of nature and person. How they describe nature and person is, so you can have, in one nature, you can have different persons. If you look at dog nature, they call it one, like what we call species, would be dog nature. And you have number of individual dogs. So that's how they describe. And a similar concept, you have a divine nature, and in the divine nature, you have three persons, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And in Jesus, you have one person and two natures, divine and human. So God is the perfect standard, who is the truth, justice, and these have ethical reference. God is the source of life, that has also ethical reference because you can't take life. And it's against Christian teaching. Abortion is considered wrong, killing is considered wrong, and euthanasia is considered wrong. And then you have the mysterious Jesus, as I mentioned, his resurrection, birth, miracles, and teaching. And Jesus' teaching is basically about love, forgiveness, the intent of what you are doing rather than what you do, perfection of the law. Salvation, personal and mankind. Personal refers to your own liberation and also the mankind, general liberation. There is the concept of grace, gift of God. Suffering is in Christianity, don't consider it as coming from karma, but it also looks into giving meaning into from Jesus, the sufferings of Jesus. The symbols are used and what they signify. They're important. And certain sacraments, Eucharist, and things like that have a lot of symbols. Conscience and sin, they come up very strongly in confession, and they have again ethical implications. Church as the continuation of Christ is another sort of aspect from that kind of thinking. Does knowledge necessarily make one virtuous? That's an interesting question. If we know something, do we become virtuous? Yes, in the case of Aristotle, purpose of life is happiness. Knowledge leads to virtue, and that's called Nicomachean ethics, named after Aristotle's son, Nicomachus. And purpose of life is happiness. It's quite interesting. In the case of Lord Buddha, the purpose of life is escape from unhappiness, come to the same thing. And he believed that basically ignorance is the main purpose for that. This is a different type of ignorance from what we learn in science or art. It's a more wisdom, we can call it. And also the practice is necessary. As we can see from Buddha's enlightenment, consists of these four stages. Truth, that life is suffering. Truth, that suffering originates from the craving for pleasure, sankhara. Truth, that this craving can be eliminated. Truth, that this elimination is through discipline path made into habit. So that's the root of enlightenment. And it's very clear. And I think the logic or the explanation is very clear. Somebody might say it's a little negative because life is not dukkha always, but it is there at the back of our happiness and enjoyment. It is knowledge may not necessarily lead you to virtue, because if you don't practice it, say in Lord Buddha's enlightenment, there's you find the discipline path and you practice it. Just knowing the subject doesn't make you a virtuous man. For example, we have great philosopher Bertrand Russell wrote about marriage and morals. But he said purpose of marriage is just sex, undermines love and relationship in the family. In real life, he had 4 wives and many mistresses, which I don't think we would approve in our ethics. August Comte, the founder of positivism, that is, he said science, truth is found only in science. He wanted the Notre Dame church, the statue, to be replaced with the Statue of Liberty. And this was the time of the French Revolution, so you can understand his sort of ideas. But in real life, he decorated the chair of his mistress Clotilde de Vaux, and performed rituals before this chair. So what people say, or what people's knowledge, what they say that they know, does not necessarily come out as real truth. This one shows the balance between practicing one's religion and exploring the others. Now, up to this point, we have been talking about the diversity of religions and trying to find meaning, and we made an anthropological approach trying to explore similarities and learning from uh, uh, from the consciousness of the people who believe in these things and why they are doing these things, instead of just looking down or condemning them. But there's also another side to it. Say, on one side, it's like a seesaw. Exploring one's religion is very important. So study deep, look for scientific and logical reasoning, see that your religion is a good religion, right thing. Meditate, practice, and you become more ethical and you preach. That's fine. And on the other side, you also explore other religions, look at alternative religious tolerance, religious. Uh, we look into uh, the other religions, and you might become less religious in your religion and even lose your faith. So that should not happen. You should go to that extreme. You should keep the balance. You should keep to your religion and appreciate the other religions. And there's this interesting, yeah, that comes a little later. Yes, the origin and causes of disharmony in the origins and causes of disharmony. First, fear of loss of primacy of Buddhist Sinhala heritage in the country, which is a valid one. Anger over the invasion, influence, negligence, and atrocities against Buddhist Sinhalese nation within the 443 years of colonial domination. And also, there's a belief and a fact minorities were favored by them. There's anger over deception by British in the Candian Convention, and their okay, I'll read this one. Their disregard for local practices. For example, they appointed Haji Mohandiram of Velas as Medige chief, that's transport, which is a position held by Sinhalese. And the clause 5 of the Candian Convention refers to the religion of Buddha, they call it, that's Buddhist religion, professed by the chiefs and the inhabitants of these provinces, be declared inviolable, and its rights, ministers, and places of worship are maintained and protected. But the Buddhist majority felt that this clause was not followed properly. And according to the British way of thinking, they had followed uh, properly. They thought that they didn't say the Buddhists were given freedom to exercise all their powers. But I think the king's protection was more than what the British provided. So there was this anger or dislike for the British way of doing things. Then we have a large lower social class. We have farmers, fishermen, laborers, and even some middle class that became poor. And at the moment, we have a big problem because, say, 25% of the country go with one meal per day. So it has become a serious problem during these recent times. Then poverty, lack of opportunities in training and jobs, to advance from that class upwards. And we had the JVP insurrection, two of them, one in 1971, the other one in 1980s. And when you have the upper social class condescending on the lower social class, like master and servant, hara cult culture, loss of confidence and failure in political religious leadership. 1983, we had the riots, and our Tamil brothers, they felt that the government has led them very badly, people in Colombo. Collapse of law enforcement, police, courts, people take law into their own hands. Then you have rumor mongers and social media helping to push certain ideas to critical point till violence erupts. No genuine approach to conflict resolution and impact assessment and mitigation. So issues are made political rather than really approaching them on the face value and trying to solve them. Sometimes adding some mitigation, say in Australia for all developments, we have impact assessment, and one side of the impact assessment is a community consultation. And then we modify what we plan to do because there are certain objections and we listen to them. And that kind of listening was not there in the past. No proper education on ethnic and religious harmony. Fear of loss of Buddhist Sinhala identity. We had the first part of Mahavamsa was written by Mahanama Thero from Mahavihara, Anuradhapura, in the 5th century in the wake of Chola and Pandya activity. So there was a fear of Indian occupation, and the author want to show that Sri Lanka is bequeathed to Buddhist Sinhalese by synchronizing the Vijayan landing and Lord Buddha's Parinibbana, that is his passing away, to year 543 BC to ensure that it's happened at the same time. And in the text, there is also further protection to Vijay and his entourage from various things that could happen. It speaks about asking Lord Sakara to protect him. And so this year has been sort of questioned, Geiger and others, and now it is considered to be about 400 plus or minus 20 BC, supposed to be the year of Buddha's Parinibbana. Then during the Portuguese period, it was really bad. Bhuvaneka Bahu, the 7th of Corte, became ally of Portuguese, he wanted military aid against his own brother, Mayadunna of Sitavaka, who was a challenge to him. And at that time, in fact, to show his loyalty, he sent a team to go to Portugal with the statue of his grandson, who is Don Juan Dharmapala, to be crowned there. And apparently, the statue is somewhere in a museum in Germany. And in this team, the leader was Paulitarala, and he gave assurance to the Portuguese king and the priest there that Bhuvaneka will become a Catholic and can convert the country. And so 5 friars came in the ship, and apparently Francis Xavier was also in the same ship going to Goa, and he dropped there, and then the others came to Corte. And so that is happening in Corte. In Kandy, you have Karaliyadda Bandar was baptized. His daughter Kusumasana Devi was baptized as Dona Katarina, and his nephew Yamasingha also baptized in Goa. So it's all turning towards Christianity. Catholicism, and we can understand the sensitivity of the Buddhist monks and Buddhist community. And Portuguese point to Jaffna, appointing Peria Pulle as the leader of the king. And by this time, Rajasingha the first, that is Mahadurne's son, he has become the king, and he, as you know, he became a Hindu, and he invaded Kandy, and Konappu Bandara was living actually somewhere in Peradeniya, they say somewhere near the campus, maybe, don't know. And his father was Veera Surya Bandara, was asked to take over Kandy and do the same thing that he did to the Buddhist monks in Sitavaka, but he refused. He was apparently killed or expelled, and Konappu Bandara escaped to the Portuguese area. He became a good friend of the Corte and the Portuguese. He was sent to Goa. He became Don Juan of Austria, was baptized, and Portuguese gave him the position of commander of Kandy area, and they brought Dona Catarina to make her the queen. But now Don Juan Austria of Goa became Vimaladharma Surya the first, and he then just before that they had Portuguese have installed Yamasingha as the king, but all of a sudden he died. They thought that he was poisoned by Don Juan of Austria, and his son was Don Joao, was a young prince, was in the throne, and he was chased out by Vimaladharma Surya the first, and he married Dona Catarina and became the king of Kandy. So some princes like Don Joao and Nicapitia Bandara from Sitavaka, they went to Portugal to become priests. And in fact, in Portugal, there is a church which was run by Don Joao. It's close to Telhira station. I happened to visit that place, and his body was there before, and there was a picture apparently, but they removed all that to the museum, and he was called the Black Prince. During the Dutch period, we have the Dutch came and destroyed all Catholic churches and things. Even the priests, they were forbidden or killed or whatever, and they were more friendly with the Buddhists than with the Catholics, of course. And during this time, the Buddhism had a revival. Now, up to this point, the Buddhist monks were what we call ganinanses. They were wearing white, and they were lay people who were doing work, doing service to the Buddhist community. They are from high-class society. And Valivita Saranankarthero, Thero, with the Dutch governor, managed to get Upasampada back and establish the Buddhist order again. He got the Asala Perahara, converted that from a Hindu sort of Perahara to Asala, Buddhist Perahara. He brought the Siravat Samagama. Then the Thai monks, especially Upali Thera, helped to establish the Siam Nikaya, which had Radhala and Govigama applicants becoming monks. King Kirtisri Rajasingha with Saranankara revived Buddhism and literature. Then Amarapura and Ramana Nikaya arose to allow Buddhists from the Low Country, Salagama, Karava, Durava caste, in maritime provinces to become monks. So during the British period, there was these English schools were spreading rapidly. The singular education was common in the Buddhist Pirivenan, and that was not very useful to the clerical production of the clerical staff and civil servants, and that was not a very good thing. And low country monks, Buddhist monks, took the leadership at this point. Now, in fairness to some of the British guys, I must say that they also looked into reforms. And as we have heard, there was the Holbrook Commission in 1833, Dunham Commission in 1931, and Salisbury Commission in 1947. The first one, in the Holbrook Commission, what they tried to do was to decentralize the power of the governor. In other words, they tried to separate it into three: legislative, executive, and judiciary, before the governor had all those powers. So that was a very good point. In 1931, they tried to do more in that area, and also help the locals to take responsibility in governance. And they did that with the creation of the Legislative Council. So that's also another interesting thing. In 1947, of course, that was prepared for the Salisbury Commission was in lieu of the independence that was coming the next year. Now, of course, they had their interests. They were not doing charity for us. They were making a lot of money. But they also helped to develop the country, because if you don't develop the country, then you don't get profits. And to develop the country, you have to develop the people as well and the infrastructure. So that's how they looked at things. But of course, they did not look into the social structure, the impact on the social structure. They considered everybody as the same for their sort of interest, and sometimes they divided and ruled. So the majority had to come up, rise up. And the leadership was taken by the low country monks. We can see Hikkadwe Sri Sumangala Theru started with Jodhya, and Ratmarani Sri Dharmaloka Theru started with Alankara. Then we have this interesting debate. Megatuatte Gunan Theros had this Panadura Vivadaya, and he was very successful. And here in this, Henry Olcott and Helena, they arrived in Sri Lanka in 1880, and Gunananda Thero moved to Kotahena. Now, Kotahena and Mutwal, they were the developed area at that time, and in fact, St. Thomas's and all these big families, they were in that area. And there was this Kotahena clash on Easter Sunday, 1883, over monkeys on crosses in Perahera, coming from Punchuralla side. Then starts English Buddhist schools, thanks to Olcott. Dharmaraja started in 1887, Mahinda in 1892, and Ananda in 1895. There was an incident in 1903, the burning of Anuradhapura Church. It was a disagreement with Archaeological Commissioner H.C.P. Bell. H.C.P. Bell said there are archaeological sites and we have to respect them or protect them or move them to the museum. But the others believed that everything that is in Anuradhapura is sacred, and apparently they moved some stones and put them on the road for PWD for a road construction, and over that there was anger, and the church was burned because they said there should not be any non-Buddhist structures in Anuradhapura area. and Anagarika Dharmapala and Walisingha Harishchandra defended the burning in a letter which I saw. 1915, we had a big Muslim riot and martial law declared over clash on Vesak Day Perahera in Kandy, near a mosque on Castle Street. And before that, we had this incident in Gampola Perahera. And also there's an incident in Kurunagala Perahera. Interestingly, the Gampola Perahera, they want to have the Perahera one Saturday, and the Indian Moors had some mosque or place of worship, and the GA, they went to GA, and GA said, yes, up to 100 meters distance, keep away, and then you can go ahead with the procession. And Devavarna Nilame objected to that, and he cancelled the procession that year. And he appealed to the courts, district court. And one of the judges was Paul Pieris. Incidentally, Paul Pieris' wife is Hilda Obesekara, after whom our campus Hilda Obesekara is named. Anyway, Paul Pieris is a real scholar. He has written about, I think, about 15 books. And he gave the verdict that it is okay for the Buddhist procession to go in front of this mosque. And it was challenged by the Attorney General, and it went to the Supreme Court. And when it was, well, Paul Pieris gave their decision based on Clause 5 of the Kandian Convention that Buddhism is inviolable and their practices are respected and all that kind of thing. So, but then this Purnagala Perahera thing, they had some sort of violence, throwing stones and all that. As a result, and that's the time the verdict was about to be given, and the verdict was no, keep the distance and all that kind of thing. So then after that, we had the Perahera in Kandy, and again, it is on the Vesak day, and it was actually at midnight, and then this again Indian Moors jeered when the police asked them to change the road and started throwing stones, and so that's the way the riot started. And the Governor General Robert Chalmers was suspicious because this is the time the First World War was starting, and he thought this was some German instigated affair. And then we had the whole problem of people being killed, large number of people died. But during this troubled time, the Christian and Hindu leaders like Ponnambalam Ramanathan intervened, and E.W. Christian, he took this letter in his shoe to England to complain, and Chalmers was removed after that. Then later on, after independence, we had Bandaranaike's Sinhala-only Act, then also nationalized policy that had negative effect. So buses were nationalized, port were nationalized during this time. Then later on, we had the movement, the Buddhist revival went very strong, very powerful. G.P. Mallasekara, Methananda, and the others in All Ceylon Buddhist Congress, they were very powerful. Nationalization of Christian school took place in 1961. So there was sort of disagreement, unhappiness, and Anagarika Dharmapala was very strong in some of the statements, not so useful language. Here we have against, first one is against Muslims seeking for economic power. The Sinhalese sons of the soil, whose ancestors for 2,358 years had shed rivers of blood to keep the country free from alien invaders are, in the eyes of the British, only vagabonds. The alien South Indian Mohammedans, again, South Indian Moors, comes to Ceylon, sees the neglected illiterate villager without any experience in trade, and the result is that the Mohammedans thrive and the sons of the soil goes to the wall. I saw this statement under his statue in Kandy. Now they may have changed that because it's not very good for Anagarika Dharmapala himself. Then another statement, this bright, beautiful island was made into paradise by Aryan Sinhalese before the destruction was brought about by the barbaric Vandals. Its people did not know religion. Christianity and polytheism, that's Hinduism, are responsible for the vulgar practices of killing animals, stealing, prostitution, licentiousness, lying, and drunkenness. I picked them up from this book, Return to Righteousness. Incidentally, Anagarika Dharmapala had his education at St. Benedict's Institution, which at that time was in Petta. And I too had education at St. Benedict's College. So we are alumni of the same institution. The debate in the place, this is an interesting one. So we had few debates mentioned about the debate that we had earlier. And now this is an interesting debate, which goes back to Portuguese time. Now this is in Buenagabao's palace. In 1953, Buddhists, Hindu, and Christians were invited for debate in Corte Palace. Now, by this time, these 5 friars or priests had come from Portugal. They were thinking of converting Buenagabao to Christianity. So they organized probably a discussion. After weeks of debating, Friar de Conde suggested that all walk through fire or jump into a crocodile-infested lake, and the survivor would be the test of truth. But diplomatic Buenagabao responded, these tests are not at all necessary. Let each one hold whichever religion he prefers. In the meantime, I am satisfied with my own, and in the future, let all refrain from disputation. I got it from Father Perniola's, some of the letters that he was examining. And I remember Dato Sumanasiri, his presentation a couple of weeks ago mentioned about Vade. Don't have any Vade. And that's a very good principle that Buenagabao was also trying to impress. Religion in the Constitution. Now, we have Salisbury Constitution, 1947, is just before independence, section 29.1 says about religion, no such law shall prohibit or restrict the free exercise of any religion. So there's freedom of religion. Make persons of any community or religion liable to disabilities or restriction to which persons of other communities or religions are not made liable. That means you can't, if you have certain restrictions, you can't, in your religion, you can't impose that on somebody, another religion or religious group. So if your religion says you can't drink alcohol, you can't impose that on another group who would not, who would take liquor, something like that. So you can't impose, if you have any disabilities or restrictions, we call it restrictions, you can't put that on somebody else. And C is very interesting. Confer on persons of any community or religion any privileges or advantages which is not conferred on persons of other communities or religions. In other words, all are treated equally. All religions are treated equally. So there's no favors. Last one is alter the constitution of any religious body except with the consent of the governing authority of that body. So something like YMBA or YMCA, you can't change the president without consulting their board or whatever. Now, Sri Lanka Constitution 1972, Section 9, and this is up to now, says, the Republic of Sri Lanka shall give to Buddhism the foremost place, and accordingly, it shall be the duty of the state to protect and foster the Buddha Sasana while assuring to all religions the rights granted by Article 10 and 14, 1E. So there is consideration for all the other religions as well as importance given to Buddhism. And it reflects slightly clause 5 of the Kandyan Convention. Roots of, this is an interesting one, roots of ethnic war. Now, I was in the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science that year 1987. Maybe I was the president of that section. And the previous year's president, Dr. Sudanta Gunatilaka, had organized with Professor Peter Sharp of Uppsala University a study. He may have come and told Sudanta, I want to do a study about the ethnic war in Sri Lanka. And so a joint study was done apparently, and the summary came to us for review. And the 3 points that he mentioned are, the ethnic problem in Sri Lanka is not basically ethnic, not ethnic, but economic. And ethnicity is used for war, that's a different purpose. And the second conclusion was, modern Buddhist Sinhalese elites say that Sri Lanka primarily belongs to them. This modern Buddhist Sinhalese refers to more present-day advanced thinkers. And the third point was, Buddhist monk preached that Lord Buddha had said, Sri Lanka is the kingdom of Buddhist Sinhalese as in Mahavansa. Now, after Susant has invited, of course, we were there as executive committee members and chief Buddhist monks of various temples, as well as leaders, professors, and lecturers of Buddhist universities around, departments of Buddhist universities for this meeting. And he asked for comments, and I said, I can agree with the first one, but I can't agree with the second and third. And Susanta came to me straight and said, are you a Tamil? I said, I am not a Tamil. I am trying to look at this as an association for the advancement of science, looking at things objectively. And at that point, Madhuluave Sobita Thero was there, and he said what that gentleman is saying is correct. Not only that, then he pointed out to the other ones, and he said, yes, he referred to Madiye Panyasi, who is a very respectable monk. He said, he is preaching the things like, Buddha has said, this is Buddhist Sinhalese state, country, and it is also in Mahavansa. We referred to that earlier. And so he was very critical about, he agreed with some of these things more than what I agreed on the economic things. Anyway, when I heard, when I was told about this talk, I thought I will also get another view from Basil Fernando. Some of you may know, he's the founder of the Asian Human Rights Commission, still resides in Hong Kong, won international awards for his work on human rights. And in the discussion, this is what I summarize. He says, again, we mentioned this, people have lived together in harmony with common ethical norms. People place their trust and confidence in the state, assuming that these norms and values will be guaranteed by state. In 1978 Constitution changed the structure of governance from the parliamentary democracy to an executive president. President is not accountable and has wide powers. There are individuals and groups who incite violence, religion, ethnicity, and class. Law enforcement. Police and courts have failed. Economic system collapse. Solution: restore constitution, restore institutions, police and courts, restore norms and values, provide basic needs, safety, food and employment, restore the economy, and remove corruption. I think this is exactly what our leads is trying to do: get rid of the executive president, get rid of corruption, get back our ethical values. Now, some opportunities to build harmony. These are the practical things I mentioned, the last part. With regard to legislation and government, constitution must be applicable to all citizens. And I think we could have an act to protect heritage and religion. And there we could give the first place to religion, Buddhism. And interestingly, a similar thing happened towards the end of last year. In Australian Constitution, we had a referendum to recognize the First Nation, which is Aboriginal people, as the first citizens of this country. And when it was announced, about 90% of the people were in favor of that inclusion in the constitution. But when it came to the election, it lost. And in practically all states, I think except Canberra, all the states, including where there are a lot of Aboriginal people, Northern Territory, all these states, they lost. One of the main reasons they argued out is that should not go into the constitution, because then you speak about only one group of people and you forget the others. So constitution must be applicable to all. So that is something that came out of that referendum. Anti-discrimination legislation, we should have it in education, employment, appointments, and we should not use derogatory languages. And we should have some guidelines on that. Don't call Marakkalaya or Demala or something like that. Those things should be banned and punishable. And guidelines should indicate some of these things that should not be done. Remove the requirement to record religion and ethnicity in government documents. Now in Australia, we are not allowed to put our religion in CVs. And I remember somewhere in a police station, somebody went and want to make a complaint, and they filled the form and asked, "What is your religion?" He said, "I have no religion." And he was told, then you can't put an entry in the police. So we must not have that kind of restrictions. Implement all matters referred to regional governance by Kugadas Ramadas in the presentation, the last presentation. He gave a full-scale way that regional governance can be improved. Great autonomy to provincial council, cultural and language recognition, even public holidays. With regard to national identity, we should try to develop a Sri Lankan identity, not ethnic or religious identities. Media and education to promote this identity. Preach what Buddha taught. This is Gunda's point. Not Mahavansadi. And this is exactly what Reverend Sumanasiri told during his presentation. Education. Improve English education as an international and working language, not as a symbol of class. Remove from social science textbooks any material that would cause disharmony and hatred. In fact, many years ago, I had a look at year 9 and year 10 social science textbooks, and I found a lot of derogatory terms and conflicting statements about minorities, Christianity, Christian missionaries, and all that kind of stuff. Introduce comparative religions from an anthropological perspective into social science texts. Provide opportunities to learn Tamil or Sinhalese, Tamil for Sinhalese students and Sinhalese Tamil students. When referring to sacred texts in preaching, ensure the exegesis and hermeneutics are well treated. No superior race, religion, or language. Media. Huge role to play with panel discussions, right? That's some of the things that we discuss. Teledramas and music that unify the nation. We have Sinhalese and Tamils worship at Kataragam, Pattinikal. Tamil kings we had, common kings, King Nisankamal, Parakrambahu after Parakrambahu, last four Kandyan kings who are Indians. Orientation of programs, news that involve ethnic, religion, and language disagreement. You orientate in such a way that there is no conflict or it does not excite the masses against. Administration, do not mix up economic problems with religion and ethnicity. Allocate resources equitably and explain why. Transparency. If you, we all accept that the majority should have a lot of resources. So if you do something, explain, that's fine, right? So be transparent. Take immediate action when ethnic or religious riots occur. We had a failure in 1983. See, when the riots occurred, JR did not take action immediately. He waited for a couple of days. And a similar thing happened at previous 1950s riots, I think. Bandaranaike was waiting and Oliver Gunatilaga took hold of the government and he declared martial law immediately. And I was told that Nagadeepa, I think I read it in the book Oig, Nagadeepa statue was destroyed, but he managed to get one, exact one, and installed without people knowing what had happened. So the idea is to manage the situation. Employment opportunities, job-oriented education, diversification and specialization. That's the American model. Education is for the whole society, for everybody to get into the society and do the work. Say we have the Oxford Cambridge model where the elite, the process is by excluding, and we are trying to get the best. Yes, we need to get the best, but we also need to get the others who will be going to serve the country. So that kind of, I think we are moving in that direction now. Give a lot of opportunities. University and technical is the one that is that provides industry and employment. So get people involved. Develop industry and technology focusing mainly on export. Find external market. Collaborate with developed economies as joint ventures, the Chinese model. Holistic training, self-employment. That's another important thing. How to run a business profitably. And get loans from responsible banks. I remember we prepared, when I was in the Philippines, we prepared aquaculture course, master's level, but we also got the business department involved. And basically, at the end, they should not only know the science of it, but how to set up a business and get a loan from the bank and work out, how they are going to pay back and all that kind of thing. Social, ethno-religious peace committees at local government to parliament level where grievances can be resolved. Now, some of my Tamil friends tell me that there is a concern about trees or shrine, first the tree and then the shrine being planted in the Tamil areas near the military camps, or statues being installed in certain areas. So these things can be discussed before, or if there's an issue, they can be discussed and resolved. There need to be sabotage and violence. That is not necessary. People have interests, then other people can discuss with it. And that's why we need to have some sort of ethno-religious peace committees, create a space for dialogue. And I think sport is an interesting area. Sports clubs and tour groups, student exchange programs from Tamil to Sinhalese, Sinhalese to Tamil, media programs, drama, songs that encourage unity, stop religious literature that has no academic foundation. I have seen some of these, read these books. Say, for example, Koletsya Nayaka and Narada Karunanayaka's book on Jesus Nam Bauddha Sravakayano is a very, very bad book written in very bad form. There's no academic basis at all and uses bad language also. And some of these other ones, Mahinda Dayal book is, I think, is a translation of Kirsten's Jesus Lived in India. This is fiction, and anybody reading might get sort of dislodged. And the other ones also, that there are some others are translations. Ken Perra's book also. Then also we have sometimes debate over shrines, whether Pataragama is Buddhist or Hindus, Madhu Church is Patini Church, or churches are built on temples. Santa Gunatilaka's book speaks about that. I had a newspaper dialogue with Gananath Obesekara on Madhupatani, sort of a issue. And finally, he said he never meant to say that Madhu Church was Patani Church before. And something interesting, we can finish this section saying that Confucius' statement, things that are done, it is needless to speak about. Things that are past, it is needless to blame. And we have these flags, national flags, as social consciousness of nations. Unity in diversity is shown in the Sri Lankan flag. And where we have the majority with the lion showing the Sinhalese race and the bow trees showing the Buddhist religion. And we have green for Muslims and saffron for Hindus. Christians are not a race, so it's not there. That's fine. And when they were forming this flag, the flag committee insisted that there must be a space between the Sinhalese and the minorities. But the two minorities can touch each other, but not the Sinhalese. So, but anyway, they showed unity in diversity. We have diverse community put together, unity. Let's look at the Indian one. They have a better approach, that is unity that transcends diversity. The saffron color is not Hindu. Saffron color is the earth. The green color is not Muslim. The green color is greenery, the forest. The white is peace and purity. And above all, what is in the middle is not a Hindu symbol. You would expect to see Shiva's trident. What is there is Asoka's chakra, which is a Buddhist symbol. So the flag actually transcends diversity. If you go to Singapore flag, again, as you know, Singapore separated from Malaysia, which is more of a Muslim country. And there was this Bhumiputra concept that is only Muslims have, they are the first people, and Chinese wouldn't have any place. So that's one of the reasons why they separated. And here the flag shows, initially there was the Islamic symbol. They didn't want to remove that. They kept that as it is, but they gave 5 stars to give a different meaning. Justice, peace, progress, and all that kind of thing. And the red is universal brotherhood or charity or whatever, love, and white is virtue or peace. So you can see they are not trying to say, in Singapore you have Chinese, Malays, Indians, Burghers, and others. So they didn't want to put any of the ethnicities or religions in the flag. So uh, I find our flag is unity in diversity, whereas the others, it's better to have unity that transcends diversity. Summary: social cohesion as basis for harmony. The key elements that we discuss: trust in leaders, systems and economy, discipline, shared values, respect for each other and for the differences, common identity, Sri Lankan, social justice, equality, social interactions, outcomes, inclusiveness, sense of belonging, that is, must feel Sri Lankan, solidarity, volunteers, samadhana, interreligious and interethnic, equal opportunity and equal access to resources, effective communication and promotion of diversity and inclusion, collaborative decision-making and conflict resolution, collaboratively, economic prosperity, unity and harmony. And the last thing, now, what is our role? We have the society, and in the society, there is the spirit of times called the zeitgeist. Now, this is used; these words are used in English. Zeitgeist, the spirit of the times. Spirit of the times can change. Say uh, just before independence, there was strong nationalism. Today, it's more economic problem. Well, that's what people are looking for. So the zeitgeist has changed. Then you have the well-timed form, which is the critical worldview. The worldview means how the people think about the world. Critically, they assess and how they think. So the spirit of the times leads to a critical worldview. And the worldview at that time was Mulu lower a ratatayatai. So in other words, we are the biggest nation. We never thought of Sri Lanka as part of the world, but we thought because of the impact we had in the past from the colonialism, we hated them, we disliked them, and we call it foreign invasion. But I find in the history, it's foreign invitation. If you look at the Portuguese, you find uh, Dharma Parakrama and Veera Parakrama, both father and the son, inviting the Portuguese. Portuguese came in 1505 or 6, and for 13 years they didn't care about coming to Sri Lanka. They were invited to come because of the Muslim traders who are coming, Indian traders who are coming, and in fact they feared that they might take over the country. So they invited them. And then of course we have Bhuvanakabha the seven, after a few generations, inviting them, asking for military assistance. Then, of course, we know Portuguese, to expel Portuguese by the Dutch. We have Manidharma Surya the first, Senarat, and Raju Singh the second, all three inviting. In fact, he sent the Dutch ambassador, Marcellus Boucher, to get Dutch to come to Sri Lanka. And he went, first he went to Indonesia, he couldn't get any help, then where the Dutch were, then he went to Netherlands, there also he couldn't get help. Then he went to Denmark, and a Danish fleet came to Sri Lanka. And Boucher died on the way. And anyway, Portuguese fought with them, but they occupied Trincomalee for a short period. So they were invited. And the third one was Kirti Siraj Singh sent Disawa to Madras and Governor Pigott, asking him to come and take over. But they sent a person, Peeves, John Peeves. He enjoyed his stay in Kandy. and he went back, and they didn't give any assurances till Napoleon Bonaparte invaded Netherlands, and it was at that time they thought, yes, it's bad situation. We have to take over take over Sri Lanka, because the French were becoming a threat to the British. So we had a big battle between the French ships and uh, French and British ships close to Trincomalee. It's known as one of the big battles. Anyway, I went a little away from the story that we're talking about. So the view, the point I was trying to say was that sometimes people get into the mind, they don't tell the whole story, and the worldview changes. And then with that, you get the socio-economic model, the paradigm, and the politician uses them. And of course, he must come up with plans and policies uh, which can change. And I think we are putting a lot of pressure on the manifesto and the policies and the plan. And it has to build trust and confidence by what they formulate and their budgetary uh, for how they prepare the budget and how they deliver it. And the media is supposed to be sort of check on their performance and the KPI, and that will feed back to the society. And we have intelligentsia, academia, professionals, clergy, writers, people have to influence the society to form this zeitgeist and Weltanschauung and the paradigm. And of course, the media has to come in, and of course, the education has to come in. So that is my last slide. Thank you very much for listening. You must be tired now. Hello.
I was just putting a text to all the participants who's been listening for over 2 hours to your talk. And I
Is
also
it?
did not disturb, because there was a lot of evidence that's coming that I have never heard of, and also historical facts that were coming in. So if you show your slides, you'll see all the all the participants. If you stop this sharing the slides, the crunch of the matter is that we have talked about interreligious harmony some months ago, and after 4 sessions, the only conclusion we came was that we'll keep the religion away as a private matter, so that we doesn't interfere with these governance issues that we are talking. Now it seems like from all your talks and what we learned, that the colonialist era, which we passed for like 400 years, have probably installed division through religious means, giving various incentives to different people, different appointments, etc., because it's easy to govern. So we had colonialists creating division, so it's easy to govern and they can exploit and do what they want to do. And it looks like that our people, our leaders, after independence, have carried on with the same thing. The education system that was installed for providing service staff and not the leaders was probably continued. Even today, if you go to a class and ask for anybody to raise questions after a lecture, nobody does, because they have a kind of suppression culture. So what I'm asking from the audience is that whether we should continue with the short discussion now, or whether we should postpone it and do it next week. The what I can also tell Leonard, please, you got so much information in there. It is good if it can be summarized, particularly in relation to Sri Lanka, with some recommendations as to how to get this harmony sorted, because unity is so important for us to develop. So I suggest you probably do a feature article plus maybe a blueprint for us as well, so that I can also get involved in sorting that out. Leonard, if you stop sharing your slides, you'll probably be able to see everybody.
Okay, thank you.
What do you think? What the others think? So there is suggestion saying better to have the suggestion next week. Are you free tomorrow? Not next week, next Sunday?
You mean
Leonard?
me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay.
So I've had one text saying that it's better to have the discussion next week, which I thought would be better because I can send the video and then people can revise it and then come and ask questions. Yeah, so there is support to say whether we should continue next week. So you think you can manage that next week?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
So
Yeah,
so is it possible for you to kind of a revision, do a little bit of an outline of what you said today, like say maybe 10 slides or something like that, so that
yeah,
everybody knows what we are talking about and what our goal is, and then make it work so that we don't waste the discussion that we had, and propose say 5 recommendations or something which we can discuss and come to find a conclusion as to what should be done. Yeah.
yeah.
Is that okay? So, okay, Lena, thanks for that. Any other comments or questions at this point? Just a minute.
Leonard, I'm very happy you gave an exhaustive study. I'm Father Noel Das from Sri Lanka. One of my friends, Leonard, is doing a great job. Actually, my immediate interest is to see how we can find some kind of a coalition, because in order to put all these things to practice, something should happen before the next election. But whether you have some kind of a plan for that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, our purpose as leads, we've been going on for now nearly 3 years, is basically to educate the voters as to what
Right.
would be the right thing. So so that the just giving the franchise of the independence of vote to the people and
Yeah.
let them decide as to what they want to do. So whatever they do is what matters. But we find it very difficult to engage with quite a lot of people because they're so busy trying to make the ends meet for their expenses because the economically we are really down at the moment. So that is what we are doing. So we actually wanted to invite people to talk politically on every first Sunday of the month. I had someone this week, next week, but unfortunately he can't make it this week. So I'll have to follow it on the next week. So in March. So maybe because Leonard's second discussion fits in there as well. So that will be a very good one. And then we can promote the next action. And if you go into a website, you might see that we've developed things, some blueprints as well as we got we this time did a kind of an ideal manifesto for the presidency if somebody wants to take it up. So that's the kind of educational exercise where we put all our knowledge and everything what we gained so far into one piece of paper and said if we do these things we might get somewhere. And today there was talk about governance from yeah, Leonard to some extent as well. So it will be helpful for us to further discuss with Leonard getting his summary into action. What do you think, Leonard?
Yeah, basically, I think the last few slides,
Yeah.
they spoke about the practical things that we can do.
Yeah. So, I mean, we need to come into very short kind of goals. Say, so you have the goals, and under that you have subtitles of various things. So we may be able to do that. I mean, some time ago we proposed that reducing waste in the country means everything, like waste into corruption, everything else is one need we want, and increasing productivity is another thing that we want, and from that only the unity comes in, and innovation and research. So we got kind of three goals that we want to pursue. So the yes, we are open to ideas and then change our perspective as well if that is required. We've gained quite a lot of knowledge, and all the discussions we've done is actually there in our website. So if you go down on our Sunday meetings, you can go to the right to the beginning one and listen to it, depending on the titles you want to do. So this gives information to everyone what we've been doing so far. So I think Leonard, you got some lot of content that can become a blueprint. Blueprints are what we develop to resolve a national issue, and that's actually basically a roadmap as to how to resolve them. So if you think in that kind of context and talk next week, I think we'll be able to make your talk very useful. There is also the talking about a coalition with the party leaders and so on. We are not. We welcome political leaders if they want to come and talk and express their views here. That opening is there, but we are not trying to promote a coalition. But we can get someone who is trying to promote a coalition, or people who are independent but still trying to get the civil society together next week or the following week, so that then we can talk about that as well. Thanks for that suggestion, Noel. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Anything else here? I know. So, Leonard, yeah, very good. A lot of good comments for you coming through as well. Anything else from anybody in the short term, and then, but we will take it up next week again. Anything else? No, thank you. Thank you so much, and staying for this long talk. But unusually, everyone stayed behind because we all were learning something. That's the crucial matter. Thank you, Leonard, again. But let's
Thank you
summarize
very much.
this. Yeah.
I had a trial run. It went for about 1.5 hours, but I thought, sorry about.
Yeah, that's okay. It's okay. No problem. So we'll discuss next week. Yeah. And
Okay.
starting with a little summary.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Leonard. Thank you.
Thank you.